Hey everyone, Coach Ben here. Ask Coach Ben podcast. Jim Lawson, Jiu-Jitsu Magazine. What we got today, Jim?
What's up? What's up? So, Ben, I was looking at some of the stats of the last ADCC, and I noticed there seems to be a trend. I want to talk about trends in grappling, and what I mean by that is, a few years back, it seems like foot locks, leg locks seem to be taking over our community by storm. And, before that, you had the 50-50, you had the Berimbolo. You have all these trends, and these trends seem to really present themselves in big competitions, right? And at the last ADCC that took place, I see a trend. And that trend seems to be the rear naked choke. So looking at the graph, rear naked chokes presented the biggest finishes, and that was followed by, and rear naked chokes, going back, there were 14 finishes. And then you have the heel hook, which there were 9 finishes. And then guillotine, armbar, and then we get into, an arm triangle here, regular triangle there. But it seems like the big thing right now is rear naked choke. And beyond that, the trend seems to be taking the back position. So the question is how do we let these trends affect the way we teach the art?
Okay, yeah. So as a coach, as a professor, I own my own academy. I teach at my own academy. You're a black belt. You teach as well. How I really use the trends is first it depends. Again, every podcast it depends, but it depends on what kind of academy you're running, right? So I run a mainly sport jiu-jitsu academy, right? I'm not the biggest advocate of self-defense per se. It's just not my thing. That doesn't excite me. So when I look at trends in jiu-jitsu like ADCC, again, they have a special rule set, right? So if we're to use sport jiu-jitsu as the kind of like the guide to how we're going to advance our own teaching and our own game, then yes, ADCC would be like the pinnacle, right? We were at ADCC. The best of the best was at ADCC, pretty much. And when you mentioned rear naked choke, I would say taking the back will always be up there. The rear naked choke will always be up there. I think I'm curious to see the stats on previous ADCCs actually.
Right.
But taking so the trends that I noticed in no-gi in the last few years that have affected my teaching mainly is the big one in the beginning was understanding leg locks, right? So I remember when I first rolled into a 10th Planet Academy as a black belt, and he's now my friend Eric Ramey just heel hooked me like 10 times in a 10-minute roll. And I was like, well, what's going on here? I didn't understand, right? So that trend, I think, is still popular. Leg locks, you can see, 9 heel hooks. I know there was a toe hold somewhere. I know there was also a straight ankle. The leg locks are still good. They work, despite Vinny saying they don't work. They definitely work.
Right.
But the thing is now the defenses are now very
evolving.
Exactly. So what happens when you fail on a leg lock and they counter you? Well, you chase the back, right? So that's a trend. How that affects my teaching really is, again, my academy, school Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, is not a highly competitive place. Like I don't run an academy to produce world champions, or we don't even do a whole lot of competitions.
But you use them for like a case study.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. But at the same time, I still run a sport school, so I want them to be able to do well against other jiu-jitsu practitioners. This is a tangent, but my philosophy is that if you can handle a trained jiu-jitsu fighter, you should have no problem with a thug on the street. As long as you don't do anything very stupid.
Yeah, don't try to invert on the street.
And you know what? To be honest, if you were very, very good at inverting and training, and you built up the movement, I guarantee you, people can't stop your inversion. You telling me Rafa Mendes wouldn't Berimbolo 3 people at once if he wanted to? I mean, I think he could. He would Berimbolo somebody and and choke them out easily. It just, I think people underestimate how well trained jiu-jitsu athletes are physically. I think in a street fight, especially, a lot of times the more physical athlete is the winner, and and what's more physical than sport jiu-jitsu? You're constantly in there. You're not, you're building resilience to people touching you, people mounting you, all that stuff. So anyway, the point I was saying is that for a sport academy like mine, we don't focus that much on no-gi, but it's everything. Understanding the trends of jiu-jitsu. So taking the back, is always going to be big. That's, of course, the rear naked choke is up there.
It's like the holy grail of submissions.
But what I noticed from ADCC is also that wrestling, just the rule set of ADCC, wrestling is huge. You have to be able to wrestle. I mean, the super fight with Yavao and Pena, they were wrestling for 20 minutes, basically. I mean, they were standing up the whole time. And also the front headlock position. I know John Danaher has kind of made that position, he's evolved that position with some of his teachings. Josh Hinger had really, really good guillotines. Craig Jones had really good guillotines. It's just a way to counter wrestling, right? If you're not going to wrestle, then you better be able to counter wrestle, right? I saw a lot of Kimura attempts. So yeah, the trends that I noticed from ADCC was that the leg lock game was changing. So you noticed Lachlan Giles was he changed the leg lock game a little bit by going into a position that people were unfamiliar with, right? So everybody knows about the saddle or the cross ashi position. I can escape it pretty easily now against a decent leg locker, but I don't really know that much about the 50-50 position leg locks from there. I know that heel hooks are very dangerous from that position. I know that you cannot really spin out of a heel hook from 50-50, but it was just, that was illuminating. Lachlan tapped out three guys that were huge, ultra heavies, and he was like a lightweight. So that's definitely something. When you see something like that, that definitely shapes a trend in jiu-jitsu. I noticed a lot of counter leg locking. I know in one of the women's finals there was a counter toe hold that just went on. So you have to adjust your game based on the trends, right? And how I teach is really, I'm trying to get people to first have fun. That's everything in my
first
academy.
And foremost,
first and
right?
Foremost, have fun, but also be good at be good at the current meta of jiu-jitsu. I don't like to teach things that are outdated. Another example is, I started being very mobile in my passing in the last 3 or 4 years. I'd say maybe longer than that. But like knee sliding, Toriandos, and then I noticed a lot of people were very good in their framing now. Their guard game has evolved to a point where they connect the elbow and the knee, and you just can't do anything because you can't pass. They're just so good at that. I teach that. Some of my white and blue belts, I have problems passing their guard because they understand that concept now. So what's the new trend right now in jiu-jitsu is body locks. Body lock passing has been a thing now for a long time. People are starting to make it part of their game. So you were in one of my classes recently. I just body lock now. I don't want to deal with frames. I don't want to deal with that. So I'd rather you push my head than you frame my whole body out with your elbow and your knee. So that's an example of a trend influenced by just sport jiu-jitsu. We can go way back, right? Look at the early worlds, right? Everybody's on their knees, right? Passing the guard. Then everybody starts standing. And then leg locks happened. Everybody's back on their knees. And then now you can't pass the guard because of frames. Everybody's body locking.
Yeah, some things they're essentially so old they're new again.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning before we started recording that we're seeing some of that happen with the Berimbolo.
Yeah.
Early 2010-ish. That was like the big
Yeah.
thing.
It went away for a while. It went away for a while
right.
because people were
stuffing it.
Yeah, they understood it. People, I guess. One of the funniest things I ever saw was I think Keenan Cornelius made a video on how the berimbolo doesn't work, right? And his example of why it doesn't work is because people didn't know what was going on. So So when, let's say you don't know the berimbolo and I know the berimbolo, and I hit you with that the De La Hiva, and you don't know that you shouldn't go to this hip because that's what I'm looking for, you to fall to your hip. And you don't know what's happening. So I'm already 2 steps ahead of you. And then you hit the floor and you're thinking about what's happening. And by then you're stiff and you're moving around and you're like, whoa. And next thing you know, you're in the back, right? That was Keenan's video. And I thought it was hilarious. And that's exactly what happens. I remember this stuff, when I didn't understand the berimbolo, man, when people just did that inverted thing underneath me, I'm sliding right into the back. Now I know how to defend it. Keep your base. Don't let them. Do not switch your hips. Keep your base solid, and just slowly exit the position. Get away from them. Disconnect the hips. These are things. And now that they released a documentary on Michael Musumeci, and I think everybody should watch it. It's a great documentary. Really, he's just a different guy. And he's just talking all about the berimbolo. I'm almost certain it's coming back. I show up at one of my other academies, and they're drilling the berimbolo on open mats again. And I'm like, hey, I haven't seen you guys do the berimbolo in a while. Oh, well, that's a trend, right? Somebody that good has popularized a position, and all they need to hear is, oh, one person believes in it, and now it becomes a thing. So yeah, the trends are super important. And I always think that you should train, unless you're just an innovator, right? You're John Danaher, or you're somebody who just can come up with things that work all the time. Like I always say, I'm not an expert at jiu-jitsu technique. I don't spend hours in a lab all day thinking about coming up with new stuff. So I have to, as a school owner and a jiu-jitsu practitioner, I follow the thought leaders in jiu-jitsu, which at this point are the high-level competitors and the high-level coaches, the high-level teams. And, the academies that don't do that, they produce tough guys. There's always tough guys everywhere, but they don't produce consistently solid jiu-jitsu practitioners that could do well against a modern jiu-jitsu game. I have a academy in an area where there's a lot of other small academies. Occasionally, we'll go and visit other academies, or they'll come visit us. And there's certain academies, when they come visit us, they're just behind on the current meta game. I guess is we're just a little ahead of them. Okay, and a lot of my guys might even the lower belts might beat some of the higher belts. Just a couple concepts, a couple of moves that they're not familiar with because they don't follow the trends. So to me, the trends are very important. That's why I always try to watch every major jiu-jitsu event, whether it's, ADCC is the big one. Like, you got to watch ADCC. You got to study up on, Abu Dhabi Pro, the Worlds, things like that, and see what is working at the highest level. Right?
Well, and even you're a big follower of MMA as well. Yeah. Seeing it in a different context, seeing the grappling under not only different grappling rule sets, but MMA rule sets where strikes are involved, and seeing how these high-level competitors make adjustments and so on and so forth, right?
Yeah, we just saw, I'm sure the rear naked choke is the highest, the most dominant submission in MMA also.
Right.
Guillotines are up there, arm bars are up there, not so much footlocks. But I just this weekend, right? Ben Askren was he fought Damian Maia, right? So he was rear naked choke, one arm rear naked choked, right? There's a lot to learn from that their fight. There's just so many grappling exchanges. There was so many things that I thought that Ben Askren did well, and then so many things that he did poorly, like trying to escape the back without a plan.
Well, all in all, it was a beautiful grappling exhibition between two experts in different disciplines of grappling, and it was fun. It was really fun to watch that exchange.
Right, as a coach, I coach MMA fighters as well. If you're coaching somebody who has a jiu-jitsu dominant game, you got to look at Damian Maia, man. He did everything. He did a single X sweep. He did a heel hook. He did an omoplata.
I mean,
he did
he's
a triangle.
sweeping an Olympian pretty much at will.
Omoplata, yeah.
I mean,
Single X.
throwing these different looks at him that he may not be so familiar with or versed in.
Yeah.
Granted, he may have had a solid training camp for, let's just say, 8 weeks, however long his training camp was, 8 to 12 weeks. Oh, no, not even that long because he had his fight. But you can't learn in 8 to 12 weeks what Damian Maia has been, pretty much doing for, I'm sure, at least 20 years at this point, so.
Yeah, I went to a seminar of Damian's like several years back. It was like at least 5 years now, I think. And he showed very basic jiu-jitsu. It was like stuff that I thought was super basic. But he does them at such a high level. And the thing is, MMA, it kind of makes your jiu-jitsu a little more basic, right? It can't be that fancy. There's certain positions that just disappear when you add punches, right? The deep half guard kind of is dangerous.
Now it turns into a high-risk movement.
Yeah,
position.
We saw the single X even. The single X guard, Damian Maia used it beautifully, right? But what happened when he kind of didn't threaten with the sweep? He was getting punched in the face, and that's dangerous, right? You got to understand that. In MMA, things change, right? So I think hopefully this is not a secret, but as a coach who owns several academies, and I try to keep up to date with the meta and teach what works and what's happening. I study a lot of the stuff that's happening in current competition, right? I'm not inventing stuff, so I hope my students don't hear this and think that I'm actually inventing. Well, they know better because I play the videos and I play a lot of analysis in my classes, and I just played a video the other day. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I showed a position. Oh yeah, it was there was a match with Eddie Cummings and some guy. Sorry, I can't remember his name. Eddie Cummings' last match, he was caught in a corkscrew lock, right? And I taught a corkscrew lock because counter leg locking is a thing now, and there was really no good examples except that's the only one I could think of, And so I think if you're a jiu-jitsu coach or if you're an academy owner who wants to improve your teaching, you got to have these trends kind of in your teaching, right? Otherwise, you're not evolving as an instructor. If I just did what I was taught 10 years ago, I mean, it's like triangles and like passing the guard on the knees. There's like maybe a Toriando. There's just no innovation, right? So I don't know how you feel about that, Jim, but I think it's everything. Watching tape and seeing the best guys is everything.
Yeah, and I think, to just kind of summarize what this whole thing is how do you approach, teaching the art with, taking the trends into consideration. I think across the board, no matter where you want to focus your brand of your dialect of jiu-jitsu, whether it's, for police officers, military, or self-defense, I think there is still value to take from these events because it's almost like you could look at these as a lab, a clean, sterile environment to where you see how the moves themselves can work, and then seeing how some of these moves can be just any way that they can be exploited, countered, or reversed. I think knowledge is good, but it's up to the instructor to filter out what can be useful and what can be trash in relation to what they are teaching, what they're trying to get at, their brand. So either way, no matter the realm in which they choose to teach, I think it's very important to stay on these things just so you can see like the modulars, the module of a move, the isolation of the move, so you can really understand the full context and then make the informed, educated decision. I'll teach that. I won't teach that because of A, B, C, D. And I think as long as any kind of instructor keeps that mindset, man, you're solid, no matter the dialect of the art. So,
yeah, I definitely agree. I think if you keep up with the trends, at worst, you're going to learn moves that have been proven in a competition setting. So you're not you have kind of evidence, right? It's just like it's the same approach in science, when you're looking for evidence to back up a claim, if I just teach some random move and I invented it, it might work in class because I'm a black belt and I'm facing white belts. But if I can't find an example of this move working at the highest level, or unless I am at the highest level, which I'm not, then I don't think you should teach that to students, because you definitely can't hit it at a high level, and there's no examples of it at a high level. Then, next thing you know, we're going to be doing like literally invisible jiu-jitsu. We're going to literally be doing moves that we've invented on our own. So nobody can ever question the stuff that I teach based on that will never work on this guy, because I'm going to there's very few moves that I teach that I've invented myself. Let's just put it that way. I am not an innovator by any means, but I can extrapolate data and then give you the practical takeaways, and that's my strength in life. Really, is to take complicated things and try to break them down and teach them to people who can then use them and better their jiu-jitsu game. Right. That's literally what I think most coaches should be doing. I do know some coaches who like to teach funky stuff, and I there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, that's part of the fun, but that's just not my style. I'm not going to show a whatever, like a weird footlock from the mount where you're being mounted and you're going to do a footlock that might work on a person that's standing up and just like literally not doing anything. But give me an example of that in ADCC. And then now I got some evidence. Like, I'll give you one last example, Jim. Is there's a move that I would not recommend this move as part of your A game, but this guy in the UFC, Alexei Oleinik, he loves doing this like headlock move where he baits you to go to the mount and then he slides in the Ezekiel. I think I showed you that before.
Yeah.
He slides in Ezekiel. Look, it's not the highest percentage move, but we have evidence that it works at a very high level. Maybe not the highest level. He's not facing like the best of the best, but he's fighting high level fighters. Fighters have made it to the UFC, and he's hitting this move. So nobody can say, "Oh, Ben, that
it'll never
that
work.
move will never work." Well, I have evidence right now that it works.
Contradiction.
Yeah,
contraire.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's how I think you should use trends in jiu-jitsu to influence your coaching. Is that use the things that work, that you resonate with, and that have a high percentage, and that way you keep yourself accountable as a coach, that your students are learning things that have a rhyme or a reason.
Roger that. Well, keyword accountability. So, take these trends for what they are, but it's important to keep up to date with them just so you can see the current state of skill and what's out there. Because if you get to that invisible jiu-jitsu, like you mentioned, or the fake invisible jiu-jitsu, literal, you might find yourself on the wrong end of the McDojo Life Instagram page. And
I have to give this guy a shout out. He doesn't exist anymore. I don't think he was an internet legend. There was a guy named James Paredes. He was famous for just these horrible YouTube videos of him doing these like corkscrew arm bars and things that just like it just doesn't work. Let's just put it that way. But he was teaching them. Now, this guy obviously doesn't study the trends of jiu-jitsu or MMA, because he would notice that move, he invented that move. You came up with that yourself, and you do it on your students who all think that you're the god, the deity here, so they're going to let you get them. And then now, next thing you know, you're in a cult. So,
there you go. All right, Coach Ben, thank you for answering that question. It's been very informative. Anyone else, make sure, if you have a question, hashtag ask Coach Ben, and then hit him up on Instagram at Coach BZ.
Yep. Follow at Jiu-Jitsu Mag.
Oh yeah.
At Coach BZ. Thanks to Muscle Farm. And that's it. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much. Peace.